a long. Oh, and you got it, Terry. Good job. And working with ELCA congregations all over the place. And my specialty, my interest, because I used to be a therapist, was always working with adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. So it became pretty easy for me to go into the prevention part. And then just recently, what we're going to talk about today, the state of California made a law. And so now we have a little more of an incentive to do what we know we needed to do. So anyway, I live in Monrovia, up by Pasadena, around that area. And I am disabled at the moment. I've been stuck in my house for 6 weeks and I can't wait to get out. But anyway, thank you for coming today. So who wants to go next?
Do you want to do, let's do mutual invitation. So you invite somebody. It's easier than trying to figure out. So everybody, when you're done, invite the next person.
Mary Jo, I'm going to pick on you. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Jo Petrovelli. I'm the administrative director at St. Andrews in San Diego. And Nancy and I have known each other a real long time. And I've done more than one of these things, never online with you, I don't think, but many times she has taught me her wisdom, and I'm happy to be here. Let's go to Woody.
I'm Woody Hall. I'm a retired clergy person and glad to be here. Scotty.
Yeah, Scotty Lloyd, retired clergy. And yeah, I'm glad to learn something new. How about Janie?
I'm Janine Morrow. I'm the office administrator at St. Peter's by the Sea in San Diego. We have a preschool as part of our mission with our church. And let's see, Pastor Marone.
Hi, I'm Pastor Karen Marone. I'm retired, doing Sunday supply, probably 2 or 3 Sundays a month, and really enjoying this part of my my life in Pacific Synod. So happy to be here. Terry, you go next.
Good morning. I'm Terry Robertson.
It's 12:05 p.m.
And somehow Siri is deciding they're going to talk to me right now, which is odd because I didn't ask for any information. I serve in the office of the Bishop of the Pacifica Synod in the area of finance, accounting, administration, and we are happy to have Nancy with us. And I give thanks for her presence as our Synod's insurance agent since the Synod started. So we're just glad even before Nancy Bond Insurance was formed. So I value our partnership, and for Nancy and Jennifer and their whole staff for always being here for us and with us when we have questions and need things like this. And I invite Pastor Wesley.
Thanks, Terry. My name's Wesley. I serve as a pastor at Grace Lutheran in Upland, California. And looking forward to learning today. I learned a lot, I want to say almost 15 years ago when I was serving as a youth minister in Our Saviors in San Clemente. Nancy helped us implement a program for, I think back then it was called Protecting God's Children. And I learned a lot back then, and so happy to be here. Thank you. And I invite Pastor Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Schultz, and I'm pastor at Bethlehem Lutheran in Los Alamitos. I think one of our members of our church is going to reach out to your company today because of an insurance question we have, not related to this, but more of a building thing. But anyway, so I'm pastor here, and then I'm also serving as a regional assistant to the bishop for Orange County in the Synod, and specifically with part of that is youth responsibility as well. So this is always good information to have and refreshers. So I will invite Jazz.
Hi, I'm Pastor Jazz. I am pastor and mission developer at the Table OC in Fullerton, California. I invite Katie.
I'm Katie Lindstrom. I am the administrator here at Mission Lutheran Church in Laguna Niguel. Oh, and I invite, who hasn't gone yet? Kitty.
Hi, I'm Kitty Weavy, and I'm the Community Support Minister at House of Prayer in Escondido. And I have with me Pastor Christina, who's the head pastor here. So we're looking forward to finding out more about the 506 and stuff. We've been having some issues with it, so. And is there anybody else that needs to be invited?
I put them in the chat. So Pastor Sandy, Pastor Darren, Pastor Matt.
I'll just click on the thing.
How about Pastor Sandy? You go.
Yeah, Pastor Sandy.
Sure, happy to go. I'm Pastor Sandy Betts. I am an intentional interim pastor, and I'm currently serving at Incarnation Lutheran Church in Poway, as well as there in an anchor church relationship with Shepherd of Life Lutheran Church in Lake Elsinore. And I apologize ahead of time. I'm going to stop video so that I can eat my lunch and you all don't have to watch me eat my lunch. I will pass to Pastor Matt.
Hello, Pastor Matt Anderson, Community Lutheran Church in Rancho Santa Margarita. I've been here for 1.5 years, and I implemented all the AB506 stuff at my prior congregation in Victorville, Trinity in Victorville, and we haven't tackled all of the requirements here yet. And I'm hoping that you tell us something today that'll make it a little bit easier than it was, because it sucked.
Can I ask you what was the hardest part?
All of the stuff with the background checks, like getting registered as a agent to receive background checks from California. And I guess that would be Darren, Pastor Darren.
Hi, Darren Johnson, pastor at Agape San Diego Campus Ministry. Thanks for helping us keep up with the law, and but also just curious if there's any way that we'd be able to collaborate on things like this, like what Matt just brought up. I think if there was any way that as a synod we could reduce redundancy, I'm interested in the possibilities that way. Thanks.
And I think the only one who hasn't gone is Pastor Casey, who just joined us. So Pastor Casey, we were just introducing ourselves and where we serve and what our role is. So if you're able to do that, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, sorry for my lateness, but apparently it was right on time. I'm Pastor Casey Klein Dunsworth. I serve at San Marcos Lutheran Church in San Marcos. And we are rebuilding our Sunday school program. And so I'm very interested to know what we need to know in order to do that safely for everybody. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
I have a document that I prepared, and Terry is going to email this to everybody. But would you like to share your screen, Terry, and show them? And we're going to go through this 4-page document. And we'll see how it looks on her screen. Okay. Maybe make it as big as you can. There we go.
You see it, or do you need it to be larger?
Larger, please.
Larger.
Okay.
All right, so the AB 506 was a law from a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. And the whole reason it started, the state of California decided to make this law, legislators, because of the Boy Scouts, because of the trouble they had, because of all the sexual abuse. And the bankruptcy, they had 82,000 claims of sexual abuse. I mean, it was just a huge thing, and it got the public's attention, and then it went up to the legislatures. So they put a law together, and the first part of the law was that, okay, everybody that has a youth serving organization, and that includes a church, you have to use live scan fingerprinting. And I think, Pastor Matt, if you said it's the hurdle and it's the problem, it is a headache. Terry, you and I were just talking about it, that the synod, you've got the paperwork to get the synod registered to be able to receive the reports. And as far as I understand, each entity each employer has to register themselves because the background checks can go to the employer.
Nancy, can I interrupt?
Yes.
It's very hard to hear you. I've got my computer at max volume and a couple other people I think are experiencing same.
I don't know if it'll help. I will speak up. My microphone is right.
Yeah, your microphone is on. It's just not very loud.
I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. We should have. Well, if I speak louder, does that help? I feel like I'm yelling, but does that help, Sandy?
It does help. It helps me.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for saying that. So anyway, back to the live scan fingerprinting. Unfortunately, I don't know an easy way. Has anybody here, can we help each other? Has anybody here figured out a way to make it work easier? I don't hear any easy stories.
I'm just wondering if I can confirm, in order to, even if you send people to go get live scanned at, you know, a police station or wherever there's live scan services, you have to register to get an ORI number, correct? So that you can receive those results.
I believe that is true.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I found when I'm doing this for the synod, and is that we can't even receive the results until we go through this paperwork to get the ORI number from the Department of Justice.
Sadly, to me, having the California only result is a limit. Really, you need the national background check, and we also need to add the sexual registry check. So the law is just about that. Okay, so thank you for moving that down. So let's go to the 3 points. The first thing is that is required is, the second one is the background check, but the first thing is to have a training program. You're gonna get a lot more bang for your buck. If you can't get it together to get the background checks, you can do the training now. And I'm pretty sure we've been talking about this for since the synod was born, we've been talking about this forever. And so now here's just the hammer saying you've got to do it. So anybody who works with youth, 18 and older, needs to go through the training. There's resources for training. There's going to be links in this document, but I'm pretty sure you all have seen it before. You know where to get some training, and then you're going to have written procedures. At my church, I joined a new church a couple years ago, and I volunteered to work in the nursery because I couldn't really, they needed, of course, work in the nursery. And I was new. I had to wait 6 months, even though I knew a lot of people. So they had the 6-month rule, which is awesome. They could keep track of me, make sure I was coming to church, and they could get to know me. And then after 6 months, I was able to take the training and then volunteer. We asked people who went through the live scan training, and we had them live scan come to our church. And we just did it after church on the Sunday. And we asked everybody in the congregation who was over 18 to please go ahead and do this, and voluntarily. I don't know if 100% did, but many, many people did. And then I asked people if they wouldn't mind making a donation for the cost. I think my part was like $40. So that was how we handled it. So anyway, if you follow the 6-month waiting rule and you get to know the new people, or people are known to you, and they want to volunteer, VBS or Sunday school or working with the youth, then you can make sure that everybody goes through the training. It's embedded into this. There's a 2-hour training for mandated reporters. We'll get to that in a minute. Nope. And so the training. Can I ask for some feedback on how you all handled the training about, so that we understand as volunteers and employees, the warning signs for children that are being emotionally abused or physically abused or sexually abused? Just voluntarily, does anybody have any response? Mary Jo, what did you guys do? And you have to keep doing it, right? Because you just do it once and then all of a sudden years went by.
Yeah,
And
we have, so in the last couple of years, we've implemented a more formalized background check. Before we were doing just an application. We had a 6-month rule. We have a 2 adult rule, and we had just like a pretty basic couple-hour training, stuff that we had learned from previous programs that Nancy was involved with. Late in the last couple of years, we've been using, I think it's called Shepherd's Staff or Shepherd's something. That includes it. It's like an 1.5-hour training and a live scan. We had been doing checks, like cursory checks on people 16 and above. So now that it's 18 and above, that changes the way, because we had a lot of high school kids that were volunteering for mostly for VBS. And we have nursery staff that are all under 18, but we still background check them because that's a much more regular interaction with kids. And nobody has complained about it. Most people are grateful that we do it. And the one person that got mad that we were doing it was someone that shouldn't have been allowed to volunteer with children.
That's a warning sign.
Yeah.
If a juvenile is arrested and convicted of something, their records are sealed, so you won't get a hit on anybody until they're 18. Yeah.
Mostly for the juveniles, it's more of a reference check. We don't necessarily do the fingerprints for them, but we do a reference check for them.
Got it.
I can say we used to use, and I was trained through you, Nancy, in leading Safeguarding God's Children, which was an on-site, in-person training. But even in small congregations, I found before every Sunday school year of VBS, I was doing multiple over and over again trainings because not everybody could make it. Now there's a company called Safe Gatherings that has some online training that people do at their own timing. They do from home and you get notification. But like Nancy talked about and is in this document, there's also free training through the state that people do on their own. So that is a lifesaver compared to having to do in person and keep rescheduling training to meet people's scheduling needs.
I think that in person, I for all those years went flying around the country teaching the Safeguarding God's Children program and having groups of people together and conversation and experiencing the training together was really impactful. But like you just said, Terry, it's so hard to get people to come, and it's so hard. It's harder nowadays. So I love that people can sit at home and do the 2-hour training, click through, answer the test, and get their certificate. And then the in-person in charge of the ministry is notified, and so that then you can be all done.
Yeah, we started using Safe Gatherings, and that was helpful for both. That was really easy to set up because as soon as they heard we were an ELCA church, they were all set with us. I mean, because they have a partnership with the synod somehow. But so that was really easy to set up. And then have people do the background checks on their own. I mean, yeah, both the background check and the training on their own time, but that's not the live scan background check. That's just the standard background check.
Matt, this is Scotty. How much did it cost for the Safe Gatherings?
I don't remember. It's been a couple years now. I don't.
Okay.
I don't
Just curious. Thanks.
But it wasn't too bad though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sandy.
Yeah, Incarnation has the Safe Gathering subscription, and I believe we pay $41 a person. What I haven't been clear on is if that training satisfies the state requirement. It takes about an hour or so. It just says it's done. We haven't had a certificate that I'm aware of.
I have not gone through that one. I've done Ministry Safe and all of the other ones in the state of California ones. If it's 2 hours, it's supposed to take 2 hours. And when I went to my church and I'm taking the test, I just listened like a good girl. And then I took the test and I thought I didn't need to watch this. I could have answered the questions, but it's supposed to be 2 hours. So who is going to ensure and make sure everybody does this exactly right? Nobody. You're self-monitoring. So it's up to you to make sure you believe that the training is what it's supposed to be. I'm going to show you in a little bit a link to something where you can make sure you've got all the parts covered, all the bases.
And you mentioned, Nancy, that you're going to have links for us, because I would love to find some free options for the congregation. $41 for the safe gatherings and the background check. That's in addition to what you pay for LiveScan.
Yep.
I mean, that's very cost prohibitive.
How much is LiveScan? Scotty.
Do you remember, Sandy, what you did?
I don't know. We're actually just pursuing that. They haven't been doing LiveScan. So I would be very interested to find out what kind of costs you're having with LiveScan.
Yeah, those are good points.
I paid $43 for a background check on me.
Yeah, I want to say that's about what we had paid per person. And we also, Nancy mentioned, had a LiveScan agent come out to the church on one Sunday. Otherwise each person has to figure out to go on their own. And obviously if they're not there that Sunday, they have to. But our issue was so many of those scans that were done that day came back inconclusive. And I guess, they did it the best. The LiveScan agent was having people, put on stuff, to get rid of lotion on their hands and everything when they were doing the digital LiveScan, but still like half of them came back inconclusive, which was really frustrating again.
Yeah. I wonder if you got a discount. Well, that's crazy. Well, that's our frustration with LiveScan.
Janine has her hand up.
Oh,
I was just going to share that we have our preschool registered, and so we've been using that for church employees. We haven't gone into the volunteer realm yet, but with the preschool requirements of the DOJ and the rolling, we're paying $104 for each of our live scans. So as a reference to anybody who's curious of what it can run.
I looked up the cost today, and on their website, I found an old rate sheet, and it looked like they charge different entities different amounts of money. So if you're a school, I think you pay more than if you're youth group, things like that. All right.
Yeah, I know in having that conversation about whether we can use the preschools for the church volunteers, technically the answer was no, because there's different requirements. There's different, for a school versus, like you said, a youth group have different, it's actually you're registering as a different type of agency altogether. Yeah.
It's not by employer, even though you're, okay. Harry, it might be interesting to find out if you do talk to somebody at LiveScan and you're the synod, if you could have like a master group for all of the congregations without schools. I would love to hear your answer, if they would answer you that question.
Yeah, I mean, the Synod has to get it first. So that's what we're in the process of. I will say this about safe gatherings and I wish I knew more about it, but I wasn't the one who set it up. The Synod has some type of organizational account with safe gatherings. And I keep asking, Carol probably knows more about it because she and Pastor Terry set it up primarily for clergy background or clergy things, but I keep saying, well, if congregations sign up and under the synod's organizational, do they get a discount? So, I don't have a clear answer on that, but I wish I did. But if you're interested in that, but I think there's other free training. When I look online, it says live scan costs in California is $25 fingerprint rolling fee, DOJ fee of $32, and $17 for Bureau FBI. So, but yeah, I wish I'll know more probably in about 5 months as we go through this process here. So.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Did I understand correctly a moment ago, Nancy, you recommended that when we live scan, that we go beyond just the state of California and do what Terry just said, which is Department of Justice and FBI?
Yes. Now, if you know somebody, if you know them and you know their family and you know they've lived in the same place their whole life, they're like I grew up in Glendale, California. I've never lived outside of the state, and you can verify that and trust, as a prudent person, then maybe it's okay that you just do a live scan on me. But if you have people you don't know, the problem is people can move into California and have a different criminal record. And if you never check that, you'll never know. So I guess it's got to be using your gut to figure out who the people are. And then if you don't really know the history, definitely you want the criminal national and you want the registry, the sexual registry on everybody. It used to be, I'll just talk about the sexual registry right now. We're going to have a link to it later. You remember the Megan's Law in California made it so there's a national database of registered sexual offenders. And this morning I went to it and I put in my zip code in Monrovia, and they said there's 1,108 registered sex offenders. Now then I kept going, and then it was going to be a charge for this website they took me to. So I went back out and I'm going to drill down, but you can go through the FBI's website and get it for free. But what they want you to do is have a name of a person. So I was just doing a net of like, who are they, and show me all of them. But if you have a name of somebody that you are looking for, if you have a volunteer coming, you can put their name in and just do a background, a free one. So definitely the sexual offender one. And I really strongly recommend, it's not good enough just to have California. You want the national. Okay.
Do you want me to share the document again?
Yes, please.
And that, Wesley, it's a different process. You don't get the national one through live scan. It's a different background check.
So I'm frustrated. Wait, go back to the 3 points, Terry. Go up a little bit. Yeah. So we talked about training. In the next page, you're going to get a free training. We talked about background checks and then the written procedures. So those are the 3 points. You need written procedures so you can show that you've done your part. And the reason you're doing this is to protect your organization in case there is a claim later. You can say, well, we've done the background checks, we've done the training, and you will be defended against any kind of lawsuit against your congregation. Okay, now you can go down a little bit, Terry, the next page. So here's the first one I wanted to point out. See that blue link? There's a free reporter training. And now we're going to talk about mandated reporters. And we've talked for years about who is a mandated reporter and who is not. Mandated reporters are paid to work with children and clergy. So anybody who's in the member of the clergy, you're a mandated reporter. You're a therapist, you're a mandated reporter. Certain professions, medical professions, are reporters. People who are not, and then supervisors of employees. So for example, anybody who works in your preschool, they're all mandated reporters because they're paid to work with children. I'll go back to my own example of me again. When I work with kids, I'm a volunteer and I'm not legally and I'm not getting paid, but I call myself a mandated reporter. And I said, everybody in my church, we are taking the responsibility because morally, we know we've been trained And so maybe I'm not the person that makes the report, but I'm gonna find a pastor or somebody who is an employee to talk to them when I see something suspicious, if I felt like somebody needed to be reported. So a lot of people say, oh, who's a mandated reporter, who's not? It's just, I think, better if you just train everybody that we're all mandated reporters. Who wants to get out of a responsibility, you know, a loophole? So anyway, that was my mandated reporter thing. So if you click on this, this is through the California Department of Social Service, and it's free. And they've got the required training for employees and for volunteers. So check that out. That would be the first website to click onto when you get that mandatedreporter.com, ca.com. And if you'll go down a little bit more, Terry. Oh, wait, sorry. One more thing. You'll see the link to ministrysafe.com. They are a husband and wife attorney. And if you are familiar with safeguarding God's children and you go through that training, it's identical. It's just that these two people are doing the training and they're talking, and their whole business is defending organizations when there's sexual abuse allegations of that. So they're lawyers, and I forget where they are. They're in the South someplace, but that's their whole business. So they've got everything you need for every different state. So if you have time and you want to look at their resources, they're great. They've got a wheel of 5 things to do to make sure that you're doing everything you can to keep your congregation safe. So there's that one.
Nancy, there's a question in the chat about what about elder abuse reporting requirement?
Same thing. Thank you for bringing that up. I always think about kids, but I have a 97-year-old mom, but she stopped going anywhere anymore. But yes, elder abuse, same thing. When we used to have these meetings in person, and we would have, you know, with Murray, Fink, and those big classes, we talked a lot about elder abuse, but it's the same kind of training, and that's included in this training now. It's vulnerable people. So the training is to not just about children. So many examples of elderly people being taken advantage of, and they're afraid and they're never going to tell you. So it's really good training to understand the warning signs for elder abuse. I don't know where the little, Terry, if there's questions, please just let me know again, because I don't see it. Okay, we talked about background checks, so why don't you go down a little bit more. And the written procedures, this law was updated. You could see it at the bottom, September 26th of 22, that they added another law. Of course, we've always talked about the 2 adult rule, and it's for the protection of the kids. But for me as an adult, it's for protection of the adults against false allegations. I mean, the worst thing that would happen to somebody's life is if somebody lashed out at you and maybe they're being abused by somebody at home, but they blame you at church. And this has happened again and again. So I want another adult, or usually older teenager, with me in the same room to protect us both. So the law changed. We'll talk about that in a minute. But so that's important to have everybody train and understand about that. One church
Nancy, can I ask a question? Can you hear me?
Yes.
The reason is I'm a bridge pastor. What is that? What is I'm not questioning the training, the education, whatever, but some of us go from one congregation to another in short periods of time.
Yeah.
What is the policy on that? And should we be getting training through synod rather through congregation, because we're consistently working on behalf of synod too? Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. Make a note of that, Terry. It makes sense to me.
I mean, interims, bridge, whatever titles and
Yep.
job descriptions they have.
That makes sense.
So I just want to, if the training, if a clergy who's serving as an interim or a bridge pastor for the synod does the free training online, the 4-hour that they need, they get a certificate. Wouldn't that, if that certificate was in their file at the synod, would that count as the synod having record of their training, or congregations having record of their training?
Yeah,
Like-
but you also got background check.
right? But my understanding of background checks is, let's say they did a background check with the synod, we can't share their results with another organization, can we?
Well, if you're a bridge pastor or an intentional interim pastor, aren't you there on behalf of the synod? Is that correct?
Could be if it's a synod call. That's not my area of expertise, so I'm not sure if they're always synod calls. What about boundaries training? If that clergy took boundaries training with the synod, does that count or no?
Karen, what do you think?
Yes, it counts. A bridge pastor, an interim pastor, sometimes interim pastors have calls. Sometimes they have a
Contract.
synod council call. So that's a little different, but they most often do not get a local call. A retired pastor doing bridge or doing an interim is under the synod, under the auspices of the synod, not under the auspices of the congregation.
Even on a contract. So if they're contracted with the congregation, that still is a synod thing. I just don't know because it's not. I don't
A
deal with that.
contract is not a call.
Okay. So then I would think, yeah, it's something to talk about, and I don't understand enough of the intricacies of bridge and interim pastors and how their difference, be some are contracted, some are called, some are a synod call. But
Since this is self-governed, and we're talking about best practices, we're not necessarily talking about the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. And so if you've been trained, I think it's logical, and we should just use our common sense, that a pastor who's working 2 Sundays a month the congregation is not going to want to do the background check on them. They're going to trust that they're a retired pastor, and then they're under the guidance of the synod. It seems to me that the synod could keep a record in the retired pastor's file that they've gone through the training. If a pastor that is going to be an interim pastor for 2 years at a church full time, then I would say the church should do it, and that pastor would lead by example, and that congregation would be responsible for the background checks.
That's why our boundary training is required, and it's required that the synod keep that on file. So
yeah.
that is all, we're under the synod more than a congregation.
Right. But does a boundary training, that counts for training, but not a background check? So what the question was, I think, is, would the synod do a background check and keep that? And does that, right? Did I misunderstand your question, Woody?
No, I just think the whole procedure, because no one has ever talked. I've had background check many years ago and had training umpteen years ago. I took the boundary training. I'm just asking the question because I was called to one. I'm not called. I was asked to serve for one for up to 2 to 4 months. I end up being 15 months. And it was virtually almost full time. So what I'm saying is there needs to just be some clarity in the midst of chaos.
All right. Well, I will ask the question about background checks. I do know the boundaries training are in your files. Carol keeps good records of those. So, and that is noted, but that's different than a background check. So
how long is there a lifespan of a background check? So if you have a background check when you come into the synod, or when you get ordained, or when you start working in one call, your call, does that run out after a certain amount of time? Or how often do you have to do a background check?
That's a really good question, because obviously as an adult, you have time to go and get in trouble. So nobody's asked that question of me, but it's logical, and I'm just trying to think logically, that maybe every 5 years, the leadership would have a background check. Or maybe when you have a bunch of new council members, those leaders would have a background check. But you know what? If we are going to put 100 points in these buckets of safety. Every bucket might not get 100 points. You might not get 100 points for doing 100% perfect on the background check, but you can sure make it up for it in the training. You can sure make up for it in the supervision. You know what I mean? You can put more emphasis on where, if you have a weakness someplace, you can put more emphasis on another spot, because we have to do all these things. I want to move to something we're talking about now. We've got the written procedures. You know how to get those. Now here's the update from 2 years ago. The government realized that a lot of youth serving organizations didn't get it together to do the background check. So they punted it down the road until last January 1st. So now it's supposed to really be in place. So if you haven't applied for your number, it's time to just apply for the number, get the paperwork. Did you get it all online, Terry? Yeah. So
I just Googled it and I can send that with at least what I got, because there's specific ones for the type of organization you are. So we're considered a youth service organization. So
I think when you send out this document, it would be great if you could give everybody that link. Now, they said youth serving organizations needed more time, so they gave it to them. Now, this is where I say the limited nature of live scan, which is just California, we should still do national and sexual offender registries. Now about the 2 adult rule. Terry, can you scan down a little bit more, please? Okay. They changed the language that required 2 adult mandated reporters, because big brothers and big sisters only work one-on-one. And so that made a lot of sense. I've used that organization as an example for many years, because if you're really only have one-on-one with a big brother or big sister, you can't have 2. But that's where you have to have the training and the supervision. So you still want to try for the 2 adult rule. And for your protection and for the protection of your volunteers, you definitely want to go for the 2 adult rule. And there's not many times, I mean, even thinking working with youth groups, you don't want to be the only adult working with a bunch of teenagers. I would never do that. And I'm sure you don't want to do that either, Terry, right?
I don't want to, but have there been times? Absolutely. Have there been kids I've taken home and you're ending up with 1 kid in the car with you? I mean, that's ultimately, you're eventually, if you're taking 4 kids home, there's going to be 1 left at one point. I always would just say, I'm going to make sure the last one I drop off is the one who I know the parents the best. and the parents just, because eventually it happens. You don't want it to, but it does.
And we all have one of these cool devices, don't we? And we could pick up the phone if we get stuck in that situation and call one of the parents or call somebody else and say, hey, I'm alone with these kids. So now you've let somebody else know that you're in that situation. I think that could really help also. Just to let somebody else know, I'm alone with the kids, or I've got your kids in the car, I'm on my way to your house. So you're not hiding anything. The people that are abusing children are hiding and they're doing things in secret. And that's part of the training we don't want to do. All right, so that was the thing they changed. The adjustment just gave more time for the live scan, and they made it looser for the 2 adult rule for some organizations. All right, you want to go to the next one, Terry? So people, the last paragraph. Yeah. So who needs to be screened and who needs to have all this training and everything? Anybody who works 32 hours a year, whether they're paid or volunteers, need to have would be considered a regular volunteer. And since we all have so many volunteers, many have more volunteers than employees. So I just say this means everybody. So that's pretty much the update on this thing. So if we're just going to take 3 things, something out of here, I encourage you to, even if, I'm sorry it's not easy, Matt, but to get yourself organized and get registered for the live scan, just in case, and then get the training done. That's super important.
So if I can just offer that a little bit about that process. The first step, so when you are an organization, to apply to be an organization who can receive live scan background checks, you have to have a specific person who is your agent able to receive those checks, who, directly, the results. Usually I think it probably makes the most sense for it to be a pastor, unless you have a administrator of some position in your church that, it makes sense for that, but almost like an executive pastor type thing. So that, and that person has to first receive a live scan background check themselves in order to be the agent. So that will, in other words, if it's the pastor, whoever that is, you're going to get a background check on you in order, as a part of that process, that application process. And it's just the reason it's such a headache is there's so many hoops to jump through. In like every time you sign on to the thing, there's like triple verification of just signing in. There's just a lot involved. So just make sure you're setting aside significant time over a few weeks in order to do it.
It's sad that it's hard, but it is private information on people. So it really is an HR, position at the church, somebody who's very trusted, because they've got to be able to be trusted with personal information of your employees. Just like you have a file, an employee file on everybody that's locked up, this information has to be kept very private. So yeah, you're right. With who's the person who gets that job, to be responsible for that.
And then I left, so I had to hand it off to someone else. And the person we decided it made the most sense was the congregation president. There was going to be an interim coming in, but it didn't really make sense for the interim to be that point person. So anyway, yeah.
Nancy, Pastor Casey has her hand up.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question about high school youth serving in these volunteer roles. Is there an age limit? So if we were going to have like high school kids who volunteer in the Sunday school on Sunday morning, is there like an age minimum there? What are the requirements about I know you said that like youth criminal records are like not accessible, but as far as like best practices for that, what can you recommend?
Well, somebody earlier mentioned it was Mary Jo, checking people's references. So if you're thinking, if you were a parent and you're going to hire a babysitter, you're not just going to hire some kid that your friend has. You're going to probably get some information on them. So a formal written application for everybody that also makes the person realize you take this very seriously, that we want some references, and then you actually want to call the references. Because sometimes people are not appropriate to work with kids, but they'll give you references pretty much thinking people are lazy and they don't even call references. So yeah, I would say have a written application. And then as far as an age group, you want to make sure there's at least 4 years different in the age category. So if you have like a 18-year-old or a 16-year-old, you want to make sure they're a little bit older. There should be an age gap in terms of the junior counselor, so to speak, and the kids. Anybody have experience or best practices at their church when you use youth helpers?
I can comment. We used high school youth helpers all the time for VBS, but they'd be paired with an adult, and it would be at least 4 years different, sometimes more. And because especially in VBS, we had a lot of small groups, so each had those. But that was a great way of keeping our high schoolers involved, even some of our middle schoolers in that case, because they were kind of too old for VBS, but they wanted to participate too. So, but it was wonderful. They enjoyed it, and the kids enjoyed having the other kids, but there was always an adult with each of them.
And this is Pastor Sarah from St. Andrews. I would add too, what I have tried to do when we have students kind of in that category where you can't background check them yet, you can still do the state community policy training with them. And those students can still be trained, even if it's a checking or vetting process that looks a little different for someone under the age of 18.
Absolutely. I agree with you 150%.
Nancy, there was a question in the chat about if people could share their child safety policies. And we have ours here at the Synod, which we developed through a template from you, but I want to make sure I'm giving correct information. I often direct people first to their insurance carrier to see if they have some templates that can be used. Is that not good?
You know what? You're going to have a better one, because if you give out a sample, somebody can't just take it and cookie cutter change the name of the church to their name. They have to go through it and read it and adjust it for their ministry. And so I would love for people to share what works for them. An insurance company is a big business. And I mean, they care, but they don't care. I mean, you know what I mean? I wish they—
I guess I'm spoiled because we had you and you gave us a good template to use.
And I
So
collected samples from congregations, but it's just real. I mean, it's reality stuff that really works. And so how you want to word it, I think it's a great thing to share templates with each other and then just customize it and make sure it works in your own situation. Because you're coming from a church. I mean, if you were a YMCA, you would have a different emphasis than a Christian well, they are Christian organizations, but you know what I'm saying? So please.
I guess I was thinking because your insurance might have certain things they require in order to be covered too. So
it's the law. So when California did this legislation, we all were saying, well, who's going to enforce it? Who is going to know who's going to enforce it? And they said in the language, your insurance company is going to enforce it. That's not fair, because that makes the insurance company, that makes me look like the bad guy. But so the insurance company, I can tell you, they're going to cover your claim, but one time, but if they find out you're not following the law, which is the 2 adult rule guidance, the background checks, the training, having written policies, that's what they care about. So you can ask as many people as you want, but just get something started, get a sample and get a policy, and then share it with your volunteers. It's going to come from the training. It's going to be the same information pretty much. It's in the training. It should be in your written policies and procedures, but it's going to be customized to you.
Kitty has her hand up, Nancy.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pastor Christina de la Cruz. I have a very specific question I don't know if you'll be able to answer, but Matt, you might have some more information. So last year we went through the whole rigmarole to get me certified to receive the background checks from people, and we got our little ORI number. We got everything set up the way it was supposed to be set up. I have the website. I have it open right here because I wanted to know what I'm talking about as I'm talking to you. And it's like a CJIS online is what I have. So then Kitty here, and then 2 other of my children's ministry leaders went and got their background checks at different intervals at different places to make sure it wasn't the place messing up. They had all of the documents, they had our numbers, they had everything, and they went and they got it, and they can see online that they got the background check. But nowhere can I find the results of these background checks. Are they sending it to you? Do you see it on the website somewhere? And I'm just like at a loss of how to actually get the reports.
Yeah, it did when it came. It came online within maybe a week to the online interface where you're supposed to be able to receive them. Do you know if you found the page where they're supposed to appear? Are you in the right
There's literally nothing on it, so I'm not breaking any laws, but I don't know how well you can see. It's like, does that look familiar to you at all?
I know it's that website. Like when you said the letters, I never recognized it.
But
It's kind of,
is that the website that you use to get it, or is there another
See,
one?
that's what I'm not going to remember because it's been a year and a
Uh-huh.
half since I actually did it at my last congregation.
Gotcha.
I haven't done it here yet, so I'm not going to remember the specifics of the pages and stuff. But there is, I was able to eventually find where the background check results popped up and able to access them. And then that's where we had the frustration of half of them being inconclusive because the fingerprints weren't clear enough. But then I left, so I didn't deal with that.
Is there a help section at all on that?
Yeah, I've reached out to them and they were like, not helpful at all. You have to reach out to the DOJ, and they're telling me what we got was basically automatic answer with like the instructions, which we already had, which aren't helpful because I can't tell what it's talking about. And I don't know if there's like another website maybe I needed to log into that I didn't understand that about. But like on here, you can click, there's a tab that says reports, and you can run a report for a time frame, and I run it for the whole year and nothing pops up whatsoever. And then when you go to the dashboard and certifications, the only certification that's listed is security and privacy training, which is the only training it required me to do, was basically how to lock my door, right? And make sure that people couldn't see the reports that I don't even have. Sorry, I know this is a very specific question, but I wanted to ask just in case anybody had knowledge about this.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, because you went through the process, it takes a while to figure out, like they're taking you to different places and you have to like navigate to different sites. And you're like, how does this even all fit together? It's like hard to figure it all out. Yeah.
This is so frustrating because here you are all trying to comply. You're trying to be educated. You're trying to do what you're supposed to do. And they made it so hard. That's so frustrating. Oh.
Pastor Christina, I went to a workshop through, sorry, Nancy, through Church West. And they gave us some paperwork, and there's an email address. It gave you kind of the steps of how to apply for LiveScan. But in the paperwork they gave me, there's an email address. It's part of the DOJ, but I can send that. I can put that in the chat if that's something you haven't tried yet. I mean,
Sure, I mean, send it to me and we'll see if we've tried it or not. Like,
it's who to contact if you haven't gotten your results. So maybe they can tell you how to navigate whatever you got. So I'll put it in the chat now.
yeah, I appreciate that. This has been such a nightmare at that this thing, we applied for it last year. It's already expiring. So now I have to do it again. So to renew it. So that's how long we've been struggling with this.
I'm also going to ask my church administrator, Tiffany, if she can give me any tips, and I'll give this information to Terry because she seems to have figured it out. But I didn't hear any problems, any pain points, or maybe she's just super nice and hasn't shared her frustration. But I'm gonna reach out to her and see if she has tips for you. And I'll give that to you, Terry. And if we have any magic bullets or anything that she found helpful, I will give that to you.
And I will say, we're just now applying as the synod, and Bishop Dave wanted me to be the person. So you guys are all scaring me now.
You can do it, Terry, somehow.
I'll have more experience in it in about, I don't know, 4 months, maybe.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, thank you, guys.
I have a question.
1 o'clock.
Just a quick question. Are we going to have this information on chat, or are we going to have it on an email, or both? Because I need to know where to find what's going to be sent to us, if there's going to be anything sent.
I will email it out, but it'll probably be tomorrow because I need to upload the recording afterwards. So I will email that document I was sharing. I will email out where to get the packets. If you're applying for an ORI number, I will email out the synod's child safety guidelines. You have to remember, we're a synod and not a church. So the things we do are different than what you're doing.
What about the question that the last pastor just asked? That would be helpful also in case we get into trouble.
Well, I'll email out the email address I just put in the chat, but I don't know if it's going to be helpful, but I'll put it in there.
Okay. Thank you.
And then if there's something I've missed, you can reply to my email and say, what about this? So.
Anybody, I know I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to look. I have time. I'm not working. I can't go anywhere. I just had surgery. So if anybody needs me to look up anything for you, please feel free to email me. I think you can find me pretty easy, Nancy at nancybondinsurance.com. I really do care about all this kind of stuff, and I would be happy to do my best to find something out for you that we could figure out easy.
And Nancy's email address is in the document, but I'll put it in the email too.
So now
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to share this. And Terry, thank you for stepping into this role. As you can see, it's a really important one to all of us. And having those resources and that information will be really, really helpful. Will you also send out the link to the recording?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and I know as someone who served in only smaller churches, the 2 adult thing and having to have 2 adults or people present when you're limited on how many adults you have, that was hard. We did a lot of things where we did different spaces in a big room so that we were always visible from somewhere rather than behind closed doors. But it is a challenge as you have fewer and fewer volunteers to break up into classrooms when you have to have 2 mandated reporters around. So I do understand the challenge, and we're trying to help.
Keep those doors open and have a rover, have somebody walking around. Of course, that's another person, but help each other out. Remember, the point is we do want to trust our volunteers, but we also want to protect them and make it free, make them free to be able to serve. But I think it's wonderful that you are all sharing all of your ideas and help. And I'm going to pray that we can figure out LiveScan better, because if you're trying to comply and it's so hard, it's going to be such a hurdle. I'm going to work on that first.
I think you said something great, Nancy, right there, that and you've said it a couple times, but it's key when if someone balks at, oh, I've been here forever, I don't have to do this, do I? It's for their protection.
Right.
As much as anything that they've been through this process. And that's something that can be emphasized to them.
Thank you for sharing it. Great. Well, if nobody has any more questions or comments, you can go eat the rest of your lunch. Nice to see you all.
Thank you all for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.